Okay. It's been a few minutes since we've done this, Trez, but I think we're live. And today is Thursday, July 30th, 2026. I always say that so we have some reference when we look back on these things in the future, I guess. I don't know. Good evening to my friend, my dear friend, Mike Trezza. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Well,
You know,
Mike, we do these things from time to time, and I always look forward to it because we're the best of friends, and we often agree and we sometimes disagree. And I always say, Trez, I never know who watches us, if it's one person or if it's 100 people. But anybody who's watching, you're free to chime in. Our comments are open, and if we see them, which I'm looking for, we'll be sure to read them. So please join us if you're watching at home or on your phone or wherever you might be. Um,
I thought you
Lots to
cleaned
talk
that
about,
up
Mike.
and gave yourself the chance to read comments live as they come up.
Yeah, that would be great. It's been a busy summer, right, Mike? It's summertime, but nothing has slowed down at all. There's lots going
No,
on. We just
nothing.
finished the World Cup, right?
Yeah, that was good fun. I actually got into it for the first time. I'm not really a big soccer fan, but for whatever reason, I decided this was the year. I guess maybe because the USA was host country, that it might be interesting to check out some of the matches, including the one USA match I did watch, which was very disappointing, which was that loss against Belgium. But I did check out some of the other ones. England against who did they last play? Well, they played France in the third place game, but
I
either
mean,
way.
it's done a lot to help soccer in the United States, right? You think like a lot of people who are previously not interested in soccer maybe have a little bit more of an interest, right? I mean, as you described yourself, the same way, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had no interest. The big thing with Pele, I was in my mid-teens at the time when Pele supposedly put soccer on the map for all Americans. He didn't really ever put it on the map for me. I remember being mildly interested that one summer, probably because I was too young to actually work then yet. So I wasn't at work and I wasn't really doing much of anything else during the summer. So yeah, I would think it was about that time. But Ray, you and I did go back and forth um, on your Facebook page as well as for just a few minutes yesterday on the phone about this issue with um, with Fauci.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, um, I do understand your point. And I responded to you on the Facebook thread in the way I thought was fair, which is that would it be fair to ask him questions? And my answer would be yes, it would be fair to ask him questions. You obviously have many more questions than I do, and that's okay. But the thing is that to me, part of it depends on number one, who's asking the questions, and number two, what type of questions are they asking? And number three, perhaps most importantly, what is the purpose of asking him these questions? If I felt that the purpose of asking whoever it was doing the asking him these questions was so that we could be prepared, better prepared next time if there is a next time. Um, B, to prevent there from being a next time at all. And number three, so that we could have, or C, I guess I should say, so that we could have the response prepared and try to get people all on the same page. But I have to tell you, and I think you know this, what I saw yesterday, I was very, very unhappy with that. I felt it was the wrong people asking the wrong questions. And honestly, not even really asking the questions, but really just taking the turn to get up there and grandstand and really just attack this man with accusations and allegations, some of which I thought were really ridiculous, to be honest with you.
Well, Mike, of course, I'm sorry. Of course, I always appreciate your opinion, but I have to tell you, I strongly disagree with you about this issue, and I'll tell you why. Um, look, I have a very clear recollection of what happened with COVID. I think most of us do. It really wasn't that long ago for those of us above a certain age. I mean, if you're a young person, it's a lifetime away, but we remember it. I remember it very well. And what I think may have happened, well, that's the second part to what I want to say. But regarding all of this, okay, it's really, really regrettable that this has become yet again a Republican, Democrat, MAGA, Democrat issue. And
I agree.
obviously, it breaks down on party lines evenly. I really regret that because I'll tell you what, my experience and my perspective is very different. I'm an independent person. And my question is I believed everything that was being told to us during COVID. I believed it. But as I began to listen and hear, people talk about that clip yesterday. I think that's the one that I posted, and that's the one that you might be referring to, Mike, is the one with Senator Howley. But really, if you look at Rand Paul, Senator Paul, who's been the chairman of the committee and the one who's really been leading the effort against Dr. Fauci, if you listen to what he asks and what he says, whether you like his politics or you don't like his politics, I just have one question. This is my only question about COVID. Of course, depending upon the answer, there are other questions, but I have one question for anybody who might be listening or anybody listens down the line or whatever, however this happens, my question is just this. We had this massive event in American history and human history affected the entire world. Okay. And you could talk about all the death. You could talk about, of course, that being the foremost, but also the economic loss, everything that happened during COVID. We don't know if that virus was man-made or nature. We don't know that answer. I'm sorry, Mike. I think we do know that answer. Okay.
Okay.
I think it's become very clear that we know the answer to that question. That most people, whether they're, and I don't mean to get loud, but whether they're Republican or Democrat, MAGA, woke, whatever you want to call yourself, I think most reasonable people at this point have come to the conclusion that it was in the lab. It came from the lab. Okay. Now, if that's the case, why can't the esteemed Dr. Fauci, who, and I say that sarcastically, but I know that he's had a tremendous impact on human history in terms of helping with HIV. I know he has. I've read all the report, I've read everything he's done. All the credit in the world to the man about that. But regarding this specific issue, which was a massive issue, okay, he can't tell us whether the virus was man-made. Forget about the lab. Was the virus man-made or was it some kind of natural event? Well, I think that's a tremendously important question that we should be able to answer. If you have a child today and in 5 years, that kindergarten kid says, Mommy, Daddy, what was this thing about COVID? And they say, well, it was a virus. And the first question the kid asks you is, where did it come from? We all know the answer to that question. I think everyone remembers what Jon Stewart said 5 years ago. If there was a chocolate spill in Hershey, Pennsylvania, do you think it might be coming from the factory down the block? I mean, the one place that had the lab was the place where the virus started.
So,
I mean, you don't have to be a PhD, an MD, or anybody else to put the two and two together, Mike. I'm sorry.
In response, let me ask you this question. If you were Fauci and you were somebody who had spent your life, now you're 85 years old, which means that when the COVID outbreak happened, you were in your late 70s. And you had spent 50 years, probably, I would think, since you're in your late 20s, studying infectious diseases. And now you have politicians asking you these questions in a really accusatory way, including Rand Paul, who said in 2023, while we were still coming out of COVID, he wanted Fauci jailed. Would you want to answer those questions for him about where this came from? Or would you want to take the fifth and protect, yourself, protect whatever it was you felt you needed to protect? So I don't understand what the accusations are, quite honestly.
Well.
That that Fauci, in conjunction with the Chinese Communist Party, actually created this virus in the lab himself and enriched himself to the tunes of millions of dollars by intentionally killing Americans. Is that what Josh Hawley's saying? Is that what Rand Paul is
No,
saying?
no.
And let me ask you, is that what you're saying?
Oh, great. I'm glad you asked me the last part because I was going to say, I don't know what they're saying, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking. And what I'm saying is this, Mike. Again, putting aside what happened and where we are today, because a lot of people say, I don't want to talk about the past. It's very convenient. They don't want to talk about it. Now they don't want to talk about it. Okay. But my question is, at this moment in time, in 2026, looking backwards, do we know whether this virus, I don't want to be repetitive, do we know whether this virus was man-made or did it come from was it natural from a market, they told us, or from some natural occurrence, or was it man-made? Now,
Let's
it
say
can be
that's the
true. It can
case,
be
though.
true, Mike. It could be true that some
Okay.
part of what you said, I
So
agree with.
let,
I
let's
think I
let's
think the
say that's the
virus, I
case,
think the
that it
virus
was
came
created
from
in
the
a
lab.
lab.
I think
How
the
does
virus came from the lab, and I think the questions that follow after that are the ones that Dr. Fauci doesn't want to answer. But I
Okay,
think
why
what
not?
happened is,
Why doesn't he want to answer? What's Ray Aurora's theory on that? What
I
does he
think
have
what
to
happened
hide?
was,
What was
my
his
theory is,
motivation? To get
yes, no,
rich, to get
I'll give you, I
famous?
feel, I listen, I'm putting this out there. If I sound crazy, I sound crazy, but I'll tell you what my theory is. My theory is that, of course, it came from the lab. I know it. I think you know it. I think anybody listening knows it came from the lab. It came from the lab. Now, the questions as to the involvement about the gain of function, which has to do with whether or not America and Dr. Fauci signed off on this business with cooperating with China, I don't think to cut off one part of this. Yet I don't think Dr. Fauci was in this for the money. I don't think so. That's not my theory. Other people
So
may have
what's
that.
his motivation now, Ray, in
I
2026
think.
to refuse to
I
answer
think.
questions? If
Yeah.
these are legitimate questions,
Right.
why won't he answer them? China's paying him, or he's got some sort
Oh
of
no! Look,
backroom
he's
deal with
got
some.
at least. If you think that this country is a divided country, as we both, I think we both think it is, and it's something close to 50-50. This Dr. Fauci is now another political pawn. He is 50. Every Democrat loves him, and most Republicans don't, and MAGA certainly doesn't. But the point of it is that that independent base, that independent group of people, which I consider myself to be. Look, I come from a family of physicians. I don't think my mother's angry with me about my position on this. But my point is, I just have a question. We can't acknowledge that it came from the lab. And if it did come from the lab, and if Dr. Fauci had anything to do with it, I think that's where the questions are. I think that's what he's a little bit afraid of asking about. The question as to whether or not he should have pled the fifth. Listen, we had some very smart people on that thread, lawyers and so forth, who said that they would have all advised him to plead the fifth. He has a pardon. I guess that he was afraid that if he said anything that contradicted anything in the past, I think that he could make the argument that he was afraid that he was going to be prosecuted for perjury, which would not have been covered by the pardon, as I understand it. I'm not an attorney, but I think he did a tremendous. He could have done a tremendous service for the country yesterday, and I think he could have cleared up a lot of things by saying, "Look, I don't know. I think we may have got it wrong in some regards. Everyone has regrets. He doesn't have regrets. I mean, you can't have it both ways. He was a superstar on the way up. There are a lot of questions on the way down. Answer them. What was so wrong about answering half of those questions? I mean, they didn't seem unreasonable to me. And I'm sorry if anyone feels otherwise, but you can't answer not you, nobody can answer the question straight up. Where did the virus come from? If you think it came from the lab, then you better have a lot more questions for Dr. Fauci and everybody else involved. That's just
So
the point.
if you think that you want to hold him in contempt of the Senate, here's what I want you to do, Rand Paul. I want you to run around and look for 60 votes to hold him in contempt of the of the of the Senate, of Congress. And if you don't have that, then shut up and stop your grandstanding,
By
okay?
the way,
Because
by the way,
that's what this is, Ray. This is a
yeah.
circus. This is a sideshow
but
designed to placate. Basically, listen, you know me. I'm not going to soft pedal it. To placate moron anti-vaxxers. That's what Rand Paul is doing there. That's what Hawley is doing there, and that's what Bernie Moreno, who, by the way, nobody ever heard of until yesterday. Okay, Bernie Moreno put himself on the map in America's consciousness with that little bullshit show he had to put on yesterday.
I agree with you on
I'm
that.
going to get up there and I'm going to bully an 85-year-old man, and I'm going to be the tough guy, and I'm going to have America swooning at my feet. Oh, Bernie, you're my new hero.
Look,
hey, Ray, you know what? Let me ask you this question. I did some background info, just curiosity stuff, checking out on Bernie Moreno. You know his background?
I just know he's a business person, and he's a Trump loyalist and so forth. Okay. I don't know much about him.
He was born in Colombia, which is
Right.
fine. I mean, that's fine. You want to know what his dad did?
No. What did he do?
His dad was a doctor. And you know for whom?
Who?
For the Colombian government.
Okay.
Which means his dad was the Colombian Anthony Fauci. And if there is such a thing as heaven, and there is such a thing as our lost loved ones looking down, I hope that father of his is looking down and wants to come down and smack the shit out of him. This is how you're going to make a name for yourself, by disrespecting and shouting at and cursing out an 85-year-old man who did exactly for his country what I did.
But Mike, look, Dr. Fauci, I agree with you about the dog and pony show that is now the United States Congress. And I watched this stuff at night, and I agree with you particularly about what you said about Moreno yesterday, the cursing out and all that stuff. Unnecessary, stupid. It was made for TV. That's why he did it. I see it on the other side a lot. I see it on the other side when I watch C-SPAN. I watch some of these people in the Congress, and that they the way that they have those hearings, they're not being serious about asking questions. It's a waste of time. They're just doing it for TikTok or whatever it is. But I agree with you about that. But you know what? Dr. Fauci doesn't have to go before Congress. That's not his only way. This guy was on every TV show in this country, okay? And I was a fan of his, But my point is that he can tell his story any way that he wants to tell the story. But do I think he owes an explanation to the country? Absolutely. Again, this was such an important event in American history. Many people lost people. Don't they have the right to know? Don't we all have the right to know the origins of this freaking virus? Again, that's what it comes down to. Because if you believe that the virus came from the lab, then you inherently must have additional questions. You must have questions. Whatever those questions may be, they may be different than my questions, but you have questions. Dr. Fauci should clarify those things. Now, okay. I don't think he got rich, but one thing that did come up yesterday during the hearings is apparently he was seeking these awards, and he got something close to $1 million, and there was some back and forth about that. Okay, I'm just mentioning it because it came up in the hearing. I don't think he was in this for the money.
No, it didn't just come up in the hearing. Josh Hawley wanted to make a spectacle of that, and he had his pretty little signs already. Josh Hawley, you see, he's not worried about the $2 billion that his overlord Trump has monetized in the year and a half he's been in office. But Anthony Fauci getting $1 million, see, that he's got to put on a dog and pony show about. I have a cane sitting in my my foyer, right? Because my daughter hurt her foot a couple of weeks ago. So I was thinking yesterday as I was watching this BS, all Josh Hawley really needed to be on Broadway was a cane. What did you do? I'll tell you what you did. It was almost like he was singing a song and dance. He's such a reprehensible individual. Okay. Don't forget, everybody who might be listening. This is the guy who gave the fist like this to the January 6th insurrectionists. That's what I'm going to call them, because that's what they were. I'm not going to soft pedal that either. And then ran out the back door of the building like the cowardly bitch that he is. That's who Josh Hawley
But
is.
but
So
but
he's up here doing a song and dance, and he's so worried about Anthony Fauci getting a monetary prize for all the work that he did. Is he worried about Trump's $2 billion? I'll bet not. Is he worried about the fact that, I don't know, you and I didn't even talk about this, right? And it sounds like I'm trying to change the subject. I'm not. Did you know that Trump is going to release for $100,000 a month? You can have essentially on Truth Social a heads up of what stocks are going to be offered initially the next day or later that day or that day. $100,000 a month. You can have that from him on Truth Social. That okay?
no, I
Oh,
mean,
we're worried about Anthony Fauci's 900 grand he got an award
but
for.
Mike, this is the problem. The problem is that what I was going to say earlier, by the way, was that a person can have questions of Dr. Fauci. A person could not be a fan of Dr. Fauci. That same person might also be a pro-vaccine person, a pro-science person. They may be a Republican. They may be a independent. They may be a Democrat. Okay.
Okay.
It's really regrettable that that whole issue regarding COVID became so political and is still political. For the people who lost loved ones, I think a great many of them have the same questions and on a much greater scale for a much bigger reason than I do. I didn't lose anybody, but my point is that it's legitimate. Okay. There's enough stuff and he doesn't want to answer it. I think in time, the answers will become clear to all of us if they're not. And I think it's regrettable that he couldn't be more clear at this point. He seems to be very healthy at 85. God bless him. I think what I was going to ask you was Josh Hawley being whatever he may be, and I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, but what I'm saying is that what about Senator Fetterman? Because Senator Fetterman, I thought, took a very interesting approach. He said, on the one hand, I regret not asking or believing that this came from the animal market. It sounds silly. Nobody believes it, by the way. But he said that, but he also said, I don't want to sit here and beat an 85-year-old man. He took a very conciliatory tone. I thought it was appropriate. I don't think you have to beat up on him, but I think that, I don't think it's wrong to ask these questions. No.
Well, when you know that he's not going to answer any questions, for you to sit there and just level wild accusations at him because you can, for the purpose of grandstanding, solidifying your standing within the party and with the base, B, pandering essentially to your base, who are, again, I mean, I'm sorry to use this term, I'm really not sorry, anti-vax morons, and number three, having to placate Trump's whole delusion about why he lost the 2020 election. It was China's fault. It was Fauci's fault. It was this one's, never his fault. And honestly, you can't even say he lost because he can't even say he lost. So what we get is a performance like Jay Clayton, where they ask him one question very directly and he can't answer it. And I agree with you, Ray. Here's where I'm going to agree with you. I agree. Disease is not political. It shouldn't be political. And if you have questions, I hope that they're answered. I don't want questions asked by partisan hacks who are grandstanding. I'm sure Fauci would be much more willing if the questions were asked by somebody who was serious. And if you tell me these people are serious, here's what I'm going to say back to you. And I know what you're going to say, but anybody who has a close association with Trump, you think that they're the least bit interested in your health or my health or anybody's health? Trump was president for 4 years the first time, now for a year and a half on this term. And his health care plan, amazingly, is still 3 weeks away.
Mike, you're not going to get any pushback from me on a lot of things, including the corruption of the Trump administration. That's the word, the corruption. There's so much
$100,000 to get the inside word when stocks.
Yeah. So to answer your question, that's terrible. But there's a lot worse than that in terms of the money and the magnitude of it. And I don't know what the recourse for that is. I don't know what will happen between now and the end of his presidency, but obviously you imagine that his children are going to survive him and his grandchildren certainly. And I don't know how far deep this goes, but his family being involved in all these deals, I don't know if there's going to be um, prosecutions to come regarding all that. But if they do happen, it's because they probably deserve it. To be frank, watching this, I don't think even the most, the strongest Trump supporters expected that the corruption was going to be on a level that it is. And anybody, who doesn't want to call it corruption, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we could beat around the bush, but it's corrupt. I think some people think that if you're honest about the corruption, it makes it less corrupt. But no, it just makes you a bigger prick. So taking these things and the airplane and all this other stuff, it's all ridiculous. But let me also just push back on one thing. The Democratic Party has become a circle jerk, okay? Because if you don't agree lockstep with the party, you are immediately pushed aside, and there's no room for any disagreement regarding the virus. What I was going to say was that, and Dr. Fauci, I just wanted to finish one point, was there's no room for asking these questions within the party. Why can't somebody still be a Democrat and be against, things like, I don't know, being pro-choice or being pro-common sense gun legislation, whatever core principles that the Democratic Party used to have, maybe they still do, I don't know, but disagree with the party on other things regarding things like this virus. I mean, it's
No,
really
I
regrettable.
I agree. I agree with you, Ray. I think there should be room for dissension within both parties.
Yeah.
And the thing I most agree with you on is that infectious disease, should not be a political thing. And it was made political. And I don't want to tout the party line. What I want to do is share with anybody who might be watching, listening, what my personal experience with COVID was. You know, it wasn't just I had to wear a mask when I went in Home Depot, or that I had to celebrate my sibling's birthday or my kid's birthday out somewhere. It wasn't just that. You know this, right? But other people anybody listening might not. My wife was hospitalized for 8 days, and she was right in that first wave of COVID in March to April of 2020. Okay, when nobody knew anything about it, the strain of COVID that was out at the time was really, really serious. Okay, really serious. And I don't know if I told you this part of the story. My doctor, my own personal doctor, who I've known for a decade and a half, and I love, happens to be a guy who's a real conservative. And I went to him at the time when Trump was touting hydrochloroquine as a remedy. And I actually asked him to give my wife hydrochloroquine. And I didn't care that Trump was the one recommending it. You know what I cared about, Ray? I cared about my wife not dying, getting better, and getting home so that my family could go back to normal. So anybody who wants to complain to me about their inconvenience of having to wear a mask and not get together for Christmas and not be able to go to a concert or a ball game, and Bernie Marino, to your stupid story about the woman getting kicked out of the football game, you know what? You want to be crude? I do. Fuck her and fuck you, because my family didn't just get kicked out of a football game, okay? My wife almost lost her life. And she didn't say, oh, give me COVID so I can prove to people I'm a good little lib, okay? She got COVID because disease is not political, okay? Infectious disease shouldn't be political. And it was politicized by Trump and people in his orbit, and it's still being politicized. And if I sound pissed off, I am pissed off about that people are taking something that almost cost my wife her life and politicizing it and doing this bullshit grandstanding thing. Get out of here with that, please. What's his name? Rand Paul, the other guy, Hawley. just get out of here with your nonsense. Moreno, with your sob story about your football game, I don't care. I care not. Okay. So if I thought, Ray, that we had people that were serious people that were asking the right questions so that, again, if and when this happens again, they could protect you and your family, me and my family, I would say make Fauci answer the question. But if we're going to do a spectacle and we're going to do a, like a circus, I'm not interested in that. And so for that reason, I think that Fauci did kind of the right thing by not answering those questions. I wouldn't answer those questions to those guys either.
I think one thing that is sort of like a compromise, and I know you went through a lot, and your wife, Mike, and your family with everything, and I did not, frankly. Everything that we went through was all secondary stuff compared to what you and a lot of other people went through.
And I
But
don't listen. I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for my wife or me, right? Yeah, that
yeah,
was what it was. And again, we put aside the politics. I asked my doctor for hydrochloroquine. I said, I don't care if it's Trump recommending it or who's recommending it. And he was very honest with me. He said, listen, they'll give it to her in the hospital, but they will not send her home with it. That's how controversial and how sort of unproven it is at that time, March and April of 2020.
look, the whole thing. There's so many levels to this that became very political. Probably there were a lot of things that probably ended Andrew Cuomo's career, but his response to COVID and the nursing home, which he never still can apologize for some reason, all of that stuff all became political. But I think what my perspective on this is this: because I didn't suffer in the way that a lot of other people have. Um, I'm content at this point to say that I think that this will all come out in time. I think that if if my theory is correct and the virus came from exactly where we all know it came from, which was the lab, and that becomes definitive, I think then all those other questions that Rand Paul, and by the way, the people who have these questions, it's a wide group of people, so people like Tom Massey that everybody loves because of the back and forth with him and Trump, or MTG who's now done an about face and whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people who have some of these same questions. But again, you don't have to be somebody who you may not be. You don't have to be an anti-vax person to have questions about for Dr. Fauci and for his response and for other questions and so forth. I think it's all going to
Well,
come
to
out.
ask him those questions the way they asked him yesterday and to harass him and accuse him in that way that they did with absolutely zero
Yeah, well,
evidence.
again, he doesn't have
Um,
to, Mike. He doesn't. What
I
stops
don't
him?
support that.
What stops him? What stops him from having done that? He did it. What stops him from tomorrow going out on whatever venue he feels most comfortable, whether it's in a university setting or if it's a press conference or if it's a talk show or if it's anything that he wants to do, or write a book about it and say, look, this is what actually may have happened here. And I think the problem now, and I think I'm being very diplomatic in saying it that way. Well, how could he do that, Mike? Because those people who believe what I believe on what I think, it would be such a horrible thing that you would have lied to us and told us something that's so untrue. Okay, so it does get, there's a certain level of animosity that comes from this point of view, because how could you make us think that it didn't come from the lab? And if the point is that why did he do it? I don't think he did it for the money. Other people may have those theories. I don't know how you could prove that. If you haven't proved it yet, you're not going to prove it. I think it's because there was some level of cover up having to do with the fact that, yes, it came from the lab. And yes, we may have been involved with that lab. And
So
yes,
why
there may
is
have
he
been
covering that
something.
up? You tell me.
Well,
Why
because
is he covering that up?
because he was the director at the time, and because he signed off on many of these decisions.
So to
So
cover up his own embarrassment, that's why he's covering this up now. Is that what you're saying? I just want to
yes.
be clear on what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely. If you're asking me my theory, I'm not mincing words. If you're asking me my theory, that is my theory. I think that every evidence points to this coming from the lab. But once you start with that position, Again, I'm saying it that way because I think the majority of people believe that it came from the lab. So if you think it came from the lab, inherently you must ask the next question, which is, well, what were they doing in the lab? Oh, okay, they were doing some research. I'm just wondering, did the United States have anything to do with that research? Again, getting to the origins of where this virus came from. I don't know why it is so political for people to ask that question, or or for the answer to be political. The
But asking
question
these
goes to the
questions in this
origins of
way,
this thing that disrupted and killed. I don't know what the numbers are, Mike. I apologize. I don't know if it's in the thousands or the millions of people who died from COVID. I sound like an idiot, but that's the truth. At this moment, I don't know what that answer is. But for
but
all those
asking
people
these
who died,
questions in this way, in this very accusatory way, I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying Hawley was doing that, and Rand Paul and Moreno, who again, before yesterday, nobody ever heard of you. So shut your mouth and sit down. Okay. Asking those questions in that accusatory, extremely disrespectful way follows a pattern, Ray, that's very troubling to me. Let me ask you this question. It may sound unrelated, but it's not. Do you think John McCain was an American hero?
yes.
Okay. Okay. But isn't it interesting the way that the minute he opened his mouth to criticize Trump, he was not only an American hero, he was a coward. He was a traitor. And again, you and I talked privately a month or two ago about your interest in the recent astronaut expeditions. Do you think? No, no, no. I'm asking you this question. Do you think Mark Kelly is a hero?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I want you to ask 10 or 20 of your friends who
I
happen to
don't think
be
Mark Kelly's the same type of hero, by the way. There's levels of heroes, but
okay.
I'm
Okay.
favorable
Um,
towards him. Yeah.
is he a traitor?
No,
Should he be jailed?
absolutely not.
Executed?
Silly, ridiculous,
I mean, these are the
insulting.
things I read every day. So we live in this bizarro world where we want to take people who are heroes and we want to tear them down for sport. Again, this is about Rand Paul saying to his constituents, you were inconvenienced by COVID. Somebody's going to pay for that inconvenience. Watch me tear into this 85-year-old man and cut him down to size and humiliate him for your entertainment. And that's what this is all about, right? This
But
is not
Mike,
about getting at the truth. This is about a fucking circus. That's what this is about.
look, I can't. I don't know. I'm not going to disagree with the motivations about people in Washington. And probably one thing that we could agree on another topic is the fact that all these guys in Washington, men and women, whatever, Republican and Democrat, you know, they're on TV, they do their job, they run around, and they make a lot of money in the stock market miraculously. And it's just ridiculous. Insider trading is just ridiculous. And then they cry about Trump, but people like Ro Khanna, people local, Tom Suozzi, I like his politics, and there he is doing the same thing. It's terrible. It's ridiculous. They all do it, and if you take their starting wealth when they get into Congress, and then by the time they leave, it's pure. I don't want to call it corruption. It's not corruption, but it is what it is. It's a felony, is what it is. It's insider trading. Anyone else goes to jail for it, and they somehow get away with it. It's just ridiculous. But on a different note, no, I don't think any of that is good. I don't think any of the politics. But you don't have to be, a Trump MAGA person to be skeptical about things or to question, the establishment thinking, especially as it relates to COVID, which is how we
Do you
got
have to
started.
be a Trump MAGA person to say that Mark Kelly is a traitor and should be jailed and should be executed? Because I don't hear any Democrats
I
saying
don't
that.
think anybody other than maybe Pete Hegseth and Trump think that, or maybe just Pete Hegseth. I mean, that seems to be a very personal vendetta between the two of them. Nobody reasonable would take any of that seriously.
Because
But
he had the temerity as a military man and an astronaut to criticize the way that Trump and Hegseth are conducting this war. And so now all of a sudden, a guy who's been a hero all his life is a traitor.
Well,
And
Mike,
again, this is the same type of thing that we're trying to do to Fauci in this thing. It might not seem like a parallel to you, but it is one to me.
I mean, we got to touch on it now since you brought it up, I guess, if you have a few minutes. By the way, let me read a comment from Boris, if you don't mind, Mike. Let me just read this. Boris, my friend Boris. Okay, different nations use different policies to address COVID. And truly, during the time and even now, it was unclear to most scientists which method was best. Either full-blown herd immunity with its risks, too much immunocompromised people, or total lockdown with its economic issues and lack of efficacy of masks. There isn't a golden bullet in addressing an epidemic like COVID. Politicizing responses during an epidemic that hasn't occurred before in the moderate era created the conditions I'm sorry,
good.
Boris.
I see it.
Okay.
There isn't a golden bullet in addressing an epidemic like COVID. Politicizing responses during an epidemic that hasn't occurred before in the modern era created the conditions. Wow. Boris, this is a long comment. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you commenting. But I can't get it all in one paragraph. So,
well, let me just say this. The thing, though, Boris, is this. I think I got the gist of this, Boris, but let me say that I think that there's two parts. There's lots of different ways of looking at Dr. Fauci, and there's a lot of criticism of him. Mine specifically has to do, again, I'm saying it repeatedly, the origins of this virus. I think that's the basic starting point. Other people think that the rest of it was all, BS. So things having to do with the masks and social distancing, and they get angry. And, I think that's some of the inconveniences, Mike, that you mentioned. So that might be what you're talking about. And then there's the whole, issue about the vaccine and Dr. Fauci's involvement with that. So that's actually an interesting point. That there are different levels to him and where people are critical of him. I don't even think of the second two. I think of just the first part personally. I just think he owes it to us to explain where the virus came from. Again, that's
do you think he killed anyone, Ray?
Huh?
Do you think he killed anyone? Because I keep hearing these very wild accusations. He killed millions. Wait a minute. What? Who are the millions that he killed?
Well, no, I think again,
Fauci himself killed millions.
See, again, this goes to the level of how deep you want to go. If you think that the thing came from the lab, then you ask the question of how it got into the lab, where that came. So I think what some people believe is that he was an active participant in the research or whatever they were doing, and that this gain of function experimentation caused this virus. And so I think that's where they say that he is a quote unquote murderer. Okay. That's where they're going. I don't go that far because I can't get that far. I get in my mind, I just start and I stop with this one question that I've been asking. Where did it come from? If you can't answer that question, then something is wrong. Okay. Meaning we all know it. So if we all know it, then how can you say trust the science, right? Trust the science. How can we trust the science?
I don't know if it's a question he can answer or a question he won't answer. Again, if it were me and somebody's been talking about jailing me for 3 years, I wouldn't want to sit down and make nice with them either.
But Mike, to be fair, you could imagine people who had lost somebody, a loved one, because of this virus. Just their own, and I'm being very clear. I don't have the right to be angry for them. That's their own experience. I didn't have that. But my point is that looking at some of the people and hearing the people who are angry with him, some of the people who were in the room yesterday, aside from, the senators and everybody else, the audience, knowing, was this something that just happened as a course of nature? If you think about a loved one passing and you think about somebody dying naturally, this would fall under that type of thing. But if you think it's something that we did as mankind, right, it maybe changes your perspective a little bit. And I just think that so many people who lost somebody would have these natural questions. And I really regret that if you have those questions, you immediately get labeled MAGA, Trump, anti-vaxxer, blah, 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 blah. How about you could be none of those things, but still have this question. Holy shit, is that possible?
That's fine. That's fine for you to have questions, as I said to you yesterday when this whole thing started on your thread. And again, if those people asking those questions were doing so in a way that was serious and seemed like their interest was in preventing this from happening in the future and protecting American citizens from something like this ever happening again, I would be a little bit more amenable to digging a little bit harder to find out. If your interest is to put on a show, to galvanize your base, and to level wild accusations against this man for spectacle, or to play into some of the delusions of the right, then I don't really have a lot of interest in it, to be honest with you. I hate to sound repetitive on that point, but again,
I mean, but by the way, you know, as a matter of legal stuff, and neither one of us are attorneys, but this question came up. We mentioned it briefly, but he already had a pardon, right? So the idea that, you know, something bad was, excuse me, I have this cough, that something bad was going to happen to him. He was operating under a pardon. So
yes, so really, what this was him. Again, we had this conversation with a friend yesterday, sticking his middle finger up at Rand Paul and at Hawley and saying, "There's nothing you guys can do to me. You want to hold me in contempt? Go around the Senate and find your 60 votes and hold me in contempt. I don't have to play nice with you. I don't want anything
Mike,
from you,
I say
and
this
I
not to
don't
sound so,
need anything from you."
I don't want to sound so, you know, whatever, but that's between him and them, and they hate each other. That's great. What about the rest of us? What about the ones who are curious, the ones who suffered, the ones who lost, the ones who in any way, shape, or form suffered during this whole thing? You know, what about everybody who's owed an answer? They could play their games and they could wonder about how this one's going to screw this one and this one's going to put a middle finger up to that one. And I understand your point, but really, it's the American people are lost yesterday. They suffered yesterday because it's another opportunity that we could have learned something. I think we didn't. If you want to say it's because it was a dog and pony show or whatever spectacle, I understand. I don't disagree. I agree with you about Senator Moreno. I agree with you about, you know, some of the other stuff. I don't think Rand Paul's coming from a bad place on this. I've listened to him talk about this many times. I think he hates Dr. Fauci and they hate each other.
Okay.
That much is clear.
And that's fine. What was the purpose, Ray? Let me ask you real quick. Not that this makes a big difference, it doesn't. What was the purpose in having his attorney thrown out of the room? What was the purpose in that? What purpose did that serve? Can you tell me? Because
oh, by the way, you know, just to add one thing, you know, the basis of this whole hearing was the fact that there were things in the diary, his diary. Now, I was joking around with somebody like, you know, who keeps a diary these days, but I guess I don't know how you would get someone's personal diary.
Man's 85. He comes from another time, you know.
I know, but I don't know how it would have happened. I don't recall. I didn't know this. I don't know the story. Forgive me, of how they got their hands on the diary. I don't like that as a matter of principle that you would have the right to someone's personal diary. I think that's a bit of an issue. But the fact that they had it is what, you know, was part of the basis of this whole thing yesterday. So comments that he was making to himself or his diary, which again, I don't know if that should have been privileged. I tend to think it should have been, but you know, in this case, it happened to reveal a little bit of different thinking than maybe he let the rest of us know about.
Why throw his attorney out of the room? What did that serve?
The way
he wasn't really answering questions anyway. Why throw his attorney out the door?
What Senator Paul said was that it's not a procedure that you don't just get to shout out and, you know, read a statement if you're not testifying. I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, so that helps us get to the answers on COVID. It doesn't really.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Thank you.
What are you going to ask me on a quasi-related topic?
Jennifer, 2 comments. I'm sorry, Trez. So Valerie, our friend Valerie writes, I think everyone just wants the truth. Yes, I think that it's just really that. I mean, if you know, labels are labels, it's great, but I'm dying for it. I think
don't think that's really what it's going to come out. What they really want is to placate their voters, and they really want to placate Trump. Okay.
Yeah.
If they
So
want
Linda
the
wrote,
truth, they
the
can read
lawyer
his
cannot speak
diary and
without being
find out
told.
what he thinks about this whole thing.
Anyway, Jennifer had mentioned that he wrote it on a government computer, his diary. So I guess it wasn't pen and paper. I guess it was on a computer. So,
Okay. All right.
you
That's
know,
interesting. I didn't know that.
thank you for filling in that detail, because I was actually bothered by that. I would have had a problem if they somehow got his hands on his personal book. I wouldn't have liked that. But look, I think that people have questions. Again, I'm going to just keep saying it. It doesn't make you crazy. I don't think it makes you crazy. And good luck to to those who think that everybody who asks these questions is crazy, because I think there are a lot of people who have some of these questions, and maybe it's not the right way of doing it, but he has every opportunity to do it on his terms. Why doesn't he? I mean,
Because I don't
unless
think
you're
these are
covering
on his
something else.
terms. I mean, he's testified in front of Congress before, and now based on this new information, we want more testimony out of him. Again, he's not compelled to do so.
I don't
Blame him for
remember.
doing
I
so.
don't
And if
see
that's
us.
unsatisfying to you or to Rand or to
Well,
John,
I just
oh
don't
well.
see us, Mike. I'm going to make a little bit of a joke, and please, for everybody who it's not funny for, forgive me, but have we changed our policy as it relates to meat markets in the world since COVID? Of course we haven't. We don't have this issue about worrying about the transmission of a pandemic in a meat market, because nobody actually believes that that's where it came from at this point. And so the question as to how we actually started to think about that, well, that was because we were told to think about it. And we did think about it, and we thought, oh wow, that's really interesting. I don't know what the combination was, if it was like a bat and a rat, or if it was some kind of what the two meat combinations were. It's not my thing, but I don't think anyone in the world has changed their policies. I don't think the seafood markets worry about this. I don't think anyone cares about this, because everyone knows that was complete bullshit. So, I mean, I think that's the problem.
I don't think
And
we do know that. I think that's a theory. I think there are other theories. And if you think that the explanation that Fauci and others are still offering is bullshit, you're allowed to think that. But again, I think at this point, it's an exercise in futility to think you're going to drag him up there, insult him, make wild accusations, and get the answers that are substantive, because that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is a sideshow and a circus and to galvanize your base. That's all it is. It's to make him pay for any inconvenience you went through. I had to go into Home Depot with a mask on. You're going to pay, Fauci. And that's what this is about.
The problem is, this COVID thing is so deep, because it's like that string or that piece of yarn or whatever in a sweater. You start to pull at it, and the whole thing becomes unraveled. Because if you begin to think that this thing came from the lab, and that maybe there was this gain of function experiment, or whatever you want to call it, research, and we funded part of it, and this was a part of some kind of a cover up, and then you begin to question the whole thing. Okay, and again, different people take it to different lengths, and I think that some people go much further than I do, and it doesn't make you crazy to go to a certain level. I think you can go crazy beyond a certain point, with some of the really crazy theories. But if you can't get to the basic, baseline level of how this happened and where this happened, even just it's not even about how this happened. Forget about the experiment. They'll never tell you. With the where this happened, if you can't agree that it came from the lab, maybe it's like just two different types of people. I don't know what to say. I mean, it doesn't
All right,
take, it doesn't take a PhD.
We'll have to agree to disagree on this point. I still love you, my friend.
Yep.
And this was fun.
Thanks very much. Listen, it's a busy summer. There's so much. Who knows what else is going to happen?
Let's try this again in a couple of weeks.
Yep, sounds good. Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Trezza. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.